Okay, so we're live. This is a very interesting new feature, and so what I wanted to talk about today, as you can see by the title of the video, is matching your goals with your diet. So typically, what I mean by that is that a lot of the time we think of our goals, okay, and we think about, well, maybe, you know what, a vegan or vegetarian diet, that sounds healthy enough. If I want to lose weight, well, clearly if I eat fruits and vegetables, I can't go wrong, right? And a lot of the time we align our goals with kind of this perceived notion of what a type of eating is like. So what I wanted to go over with today, something really, not simple, but something kind of generalized, is just basically going over what carbohydrates, proteins, and fats really mean in a diet, and do they actually correlate with your goal. So what we're looking at here, as you can see on this kind of large board with all of these crazy numbers all over the place, we have carbohydrates and their respective macronutrient percentages. We have protein with their respective macronutrient percentages, and fats, of course, with the same thing. A lot of the time, I hear people when they come up to me and they say, look, I'm trying to lose weight and I'm eating vegetables and I'm eating lots of fruit. Why is it that I'm finding myself kind of static or kind of gaining weight? And this is a very typical question, and the reason why is because we have to really look into what the macronutrient split of your vegetarian or vegan or paleo or Whole30 or ketogenic diet actually means. So at face value, if this certain diet that you see all over the internet and people are talking about it on the news and stuff like that, if a certain diet appears to be something that can help you from a specific goal standpoint, like losing weight or getting stronger or whatever it is, just general vitality, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to actually achieve that goal just because it looks that way. So I just want to go over a few principles here, okay, that will help you kind of paint a picture that you can apply to whatever goal that you would like to achieve when it comes to health, okay? So the first thing here that I kind of want you to notice on the board is that we have carbohydrates, okay? And as you can see in purple, we have their respective percent macronutrients going down in descending order. Now, you're skipping around a little bit here, but for the most part, they're generally going down, and I'm going to show you what this actually means. Now, the most important macronutrient that you want to pay attention to is carbohydrates, okay? They're going to have the most impact, and they're going to have the most direct correlation to why or why not you're achieving your goal. Carbohydrates, sugars, we're talking about a macronutrient that has kind of a stronghold, okay, on whatever it is that you want to achieve. So this number, this percentage, the grams, the calories from carbohydrates, okay, whatever that number is, okay, can be a strong indicator on whether or not you are achieving your goal or not achieving your goal. Let's talk about weight loss, okay? Let's just pick a goal so that way we have a generalized area that we can kind of focus on. Everybody wants to lose weight. Everybody wants to lose some sort of, amount of weight, whether it be 5 or 15, 50, 100, 200, 300, whatever it is. The amount doesn't necessarily mean anything because these principles apply to the vast spectrum of if you want to lose 5 pounds or if you want to lose 300 pounds, okay? So we want to pay attention to the amount of carbohydrates from percentage. Now, the reason why we want to do that is because carbohydrates or sugar, whatever form that they come in the body and in food, they have a specific effect, okay, on the body, and has a specific effect on the pancreas and the liver, okay? Now, the pancreas and the liver are very important in regulating metabolism and ensuring that food is being used a certain way and used in an efficient way or non-efficient way, but used in the way that's making your body tick, okay? So at a specific time, whether it's efficient or not, your body knows how to use fuel for itself based upon what you've eaten, okay? So you have a history of eating certain types of foods, your body looks at that type of diet and says, okay, the best way for me to go about using this food is this way, whatever it is. And let's just say it's a high 80%, 90% from carbohydrates, your body is going to use it the best way it can. Not going to say it's the most efficient way to use energy, because it's definitely not. Your body's going to do with what it needs to do with it. So anyway, don't want to kind of stray from the point here. The bottom line here is, I mentioned, the liver and the pancreas are going to be key ingredients here into how we regulate metabolism, how we utilize certain fuel sources. We have two of them. We have carbohydrates and we have fats, okay? And both of them come in different forms, and we're going to get to that as well, okay? So, up top here, we also have, just to kind of stray, because there's really no order because we're live here. And of course, if you have any questions, I can't really see the questions because I'm filming from my iPad and the screen's pointed that way. So post any questions, post a like or whatever the hell you want. You can give me a dislike, I don't care. And I'll address them after. And if you guys want to learn anything specific about nutrition or fitness or health, post me a message and let me know what you want to hear about. Anyway, getting back to the point here. So we have carbohydrates, and again, this is going to be the main culprit of whether your goal is going to be achieved or not, or whether you're going to remain static, okay? And just to kind of like go off a tangent here because there's just so much stuff here. Okay, so we have in pretty much the order of the diet that you would be using carbohydrates as fuel. So we have vegan, vegetarian, Whole30, paleo, ketogenic. So the more down to the left of the spectrum, you're going to find that you're using more of a percentage of carbohydrates, and the more down to the right side, you're going to find that you're using a less percentage of carbohydrates. So getting back to the point here, liver, pancreas, very important in regulating metabolism and understanding how I'm going to use the amount of food that they've given me, and what am I going to do with it? How am I going to use it? What am I going to do with it? And so your pancreas basically develops a hormone called insulin. Okay, insulin is dispersed into the blood depending on how much glucose is then in the blood. Your body detects how much sugar is going to be put into your body then, and over a history of what you've been eating, of course, as well. So the bottom line here is that if you want to really understand how to lose weight, okay, the name of the game is going to be insulin regulation. And the reason for that is that insulin, when it's dispersed into the blood, the intensity and the amount, the volume that it's dispersed into the blood is in direct correlation with your ability to utilize fat as fuel. So I'm going to say that again. So I'm talking a lot and my mouth's getting dry. So what this really means, okay? Insulin is a hormone, like we said. Okay, and the moment that it's gone into the body, okay, your ability to utilize fat, your fat stores, your adipose tissue, okay, the fat that you see on your body, okay, that's there for a rainy day and whatever the case may be, your ability to use that as fuel stops. Okay, I'm going to say that one more time and kind of just because it's a principle that if you really understand it, making the decisions that you make throughout life, as far as the type of foods that you're eating, and where you're going to dinner. If you kind of understand this principle, and this kind of heavily flies under the radar, and people don't really understand this, is that when you eat carbohydrates, and we're not talking about like if you have like 3 grams of carbohydrates a day, then no. We're talking about over the grand spectrum of your entire diet. And then we can also talk about an entire day as well, and that's basically talking about glycemic load, but we'll get to that another time. The main principle here, okay, is that if you are eating, let's just say, 60 to 70% carbohydrates in your diet, okay, that means that insulin is being used, that hormone that we talked about that's excreted in the pancreas, from the pancreas, is being used way too often. Okay, which can result in something called insulin sensitivity, which is pretty much a precursor to diabetes, metabolic syndrome. Basically, the things that when you go to the doctor and they're looking at your bloods and they're like, yeah, this doesn't look great. This is basically the precursor to that. This is pretty much the reason why you're starting to see lab values that aren't in your favor from a vitality standpoint, health standpoint. So again, can't stress this enough. If there's anything to take away from this video today, okay, the one thing that I would say is that insulin stops fat metabolism, okay? And fat metabolism is essentially the only effective way to lose weight, okay? So I say the only effective way to lose weight because if you're not metabolizing fat, you can still technically lose weight. Meaning you can step on the scale and the amount of weight can decrease completely because you could be losing other tissue bases other than adipose tissue, your fat stores. So again, I'm just getting technical with it, but being kind of specific to this point is that carbohydrate metabolism, okay, its connection to insulin is basically the slammed door on your ability to lose fat, okay? And of course, if you want to lose weight, the most effective, the most efficient, the healthiest way, the best way for your body, especially if you want to live a long life and you want to go to the doctor and him not give you bad news as far as what is exactly in your blood that's kind of a detriment to your health, you have to understand that fat needs to be the primary fuel source. And that means that carbohydrates needs to be drastically decreased. So, getting back to the board here, and we're just going to go through some of these little charts here that are kind of generalized. But as we go from left to right, we're going to find diets that are in tune with the macronutrient splits. So with a vegan diet. Now these are generalities. I kind of just pulled these out of my head based upon, of course, literature and research. But I'm just trying to be general with you here. So we have a vegan diet. You can even correlate it to a vegetarian diet. That's why I didn't break them down exactly. It's kind of just as you go along, it just decreases. So we've got carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Those are the three macronutrients that make up food that we eat, okay? Those are the only three ones. And then you have micronutrients, which are vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, and things that are on a smaller scale that affect your metabolism in ways as well. We'll get to that another time. Today's for this. So we've got vegan or vegetarian diet, and as you go along, 60, 30, 10. Okay, and these are percents. So typically for a vegan diet, and of course it could range much different than this. This could be just a generalized average, but the one thing you can take away is that you're going to be damn sure that if you're a vegan, you're probably not getting nearly as much fat and protein as you are carbohydrates. That's probably going to be the case. And the reason why is because the foods that you're eating in a vegan diet, there are no animal products. Okay, so animal products are going to be the source of protein and fat. Now you can also get plant-based fats as well. You can also get plant-based proteins as well. But if you're eating like a normal human being a certain amount of food, it's not going to add up to this split. It's probably not very likely. So again, while I'm being generalized, I'm estimating, but this is what it is, all right? So as we go down the line, vegan, 60, 30, 10. So if you're somebody, and I've had a friend actually who was on a vegan diet, and I didn't speak to him about it, but I heard from a friend through a friend, and he kind of realized that I'm eating vegan, and at first glance I was like, clearly I'm going to lose weight if I'm vegan, Well, no, because again, just the rule of thumb here, just along with the other things that we talked about, if you are having, let's just say 50% and higher of carbohydrates from your diet, it's very unlikely that you're going to lose weight if you're relying on the diet itself. Look, there are plenty of people out there who eat 80% carbohydrates from their diet and they exercise 7 days a week and they lose weight and it's fine. There's a way to get around it always. But look, if you want your body to metabolize fat as fuel, the really efficient way of losing weight, okay, the really not easy way, because believe me, no form of weight loss, any way you cut it, is easy. It's just not. Especially with the types of foods that we have in this world now, we've been conditioned in certain ways. Getting off this stuff is really, really hard. So there's no easy way to do this. But bottom line here is that 60, 30, 10 is very unlikely that you're going to be losing any weight. Okay, just moving on now as we go down here. Okay, so we've got vegan, vegetarian, and we can, it could be mixed in with other types of diets as well, but the bottom line here, like I keep saying, is that vegan, vegetarian, Whole30, paleo, ketogenic, this is kind of the trend that you're going to be going. This is the spectrum. High amounts of carbohydrates, low amounts of carbohydrates. Okay, and we're also going to talk about fat, which I haven't really talked about. which is a really big deal. Okay, so now we're going down the line here. 40, 40, 20. Okay, so more of a balance here. We've got protein and carbohydrates, and we've got 20% fat. Now, as we're increasing in fat and decreasing in everything else, the one thing that you want to understand here, okay, I apologize, the one thing that you want to understand here, okay, is that fat, okay, so we're thinking that if you want to lose weight, all right, you have to use fat as your fuel source. You want to be using your adipose tissue as your fuel source. Now, your body can't really understand that you want it to lose your adipose tissue. It's not like this thing where you think about it and your body understands your thoughts. No, we have to increase our fat content, okay, meaning that we have to eat more fat, okay, which scares the shit out of a lot of people, and I don't know how cursing affects all this stuff. Anyway, eating a lot more fat scares the crap out of people. Scares the crap out of people, and I understand that, and it should. It should, because if your nutritionist or dietitian is telling you, okay, you know what, there's this new thing where you're eating more fat, and that's going to help you lose weight, and that's the only thing that they give you, that's it. You keep everything else the same, that's a very dangerous position, okay? And the reason why is because if you're continuing the increase and your stable amount of high amounts of carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, okay, you're keeping it high, and then you're just eating fat on top of it, no, that's not going to work. That's actually going to only rapidly increase, okay, your bad blood levels, your cholesterol levels, your triglyceride levels, okay, blood pressure, incidence of diabetes, and so on and so forth. You can go down the line. The thing here is that you can't just increase fat and then la-di-da, you're losing weight. No, of course that makes no sense. But there's a kind of a rising thought that high-fat diets are the way to lose weight, which couldn't be more wrong. It's correct, but by itself, if I were to just say that and people were just to eat fat, you would be in a lot of trouble, and that would be just bad advice. And we're going to talk about more of that, okay, as we go down the line here. So we've got 40, 40, 20, so fat's increasing, 40 and 40 carbohydrates, and protein, okay, are, increasing and decreasing respectively, okay? We're going to keep going down the line. Now, I'm not really sure where Whole30 fits in here as far as if it's over paleo, if it's before it. I made this really quick. I didn't dissect every type of food and kind of correlate the numbers. It's a generalized plan here, but just understand, vegan and vegetarian are going to be before everything else, and ketogenic, paleo, and Whole30 are going to be on the right side of the spectrum. So we're going to keep going down. Sorry. So we've got 15, 50, and 35, okay? What does this mean? We've got 15% of carbohydrates in your diet, and then we've got a whopping 50 grams of protein and 35 grams of fat, percent, excuse me. I meant, you know what I mean, percent. So this is a really interesting one, and the reason why I say this is a really interesting one is if, let's just say you adopt this breakdown, okay? And you adopt it kind of right out the gate, like you're somebody who eats high amounts of refined carbohydrates in general, eats out a lot and stuff like that. It's not somebody who is like trying to eat healthy necessarily, but like they're trying to, but like they're not, whatever the case may be. This is a high protein diet, which, a lot of people know as like the Atkins diet, which is it's kind of not really, but that's what people know it as, is Atkins is a high protein diet, which is considered to a high protein diet. Okay, so we have 50%, 15 at carbohydrates, and 35 in fat. The one thing I want you to take away from here is that if you're somebody who is just jumping into this type of breakdown, and you eat, like, let's just say you've gone from like 60% of your carbohydrates is your diet to 50% protein, your body understands that I need a source of fuel that's efficient, and that only comes in the form, I need a source of fuel, and that only comes in the form of carbohydrates and fats, okay? Carbohydrates and fats are the two fuel sources that your body uses to basically regulate its metabolism. Protein, okay, is going to be a building block. It's not something that you can run on. You can under certain survival circumstances when it's absolutely necessary, but your body doesn't run on protein, and if it did, your kidneys would be killing you, and you would be in a very serious health risk. Okay, but bottom line here is that I want to talk to you about here is that if you're going from 60%, 70% carbohydrates and you're like, I'm going to do a high protein diet, you do that, your body, all it's going to do is take the protein and convert it to carbohydrates and glucose into the blood. What does that mean exactly? That means that, where's the best place to put this? So I'm going to put it up here. So bottom line is that carbohydrates looks like this: carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. By the way, that's why it says CHO. Okay, that's a carbohydrate. Okay, now protein, okay, is going to be nitrogen plus the CHO. That's what protein is. That's all it is. Now, if your body is going from 70% carbohydrates to high amounts of protein and then let's just say 15 carbohydrates, your shift has been so drastic that now your body is like scrounging to find carbohydrates so it can convert it to glucose so you can use it as fuel. When this happens so rapidly and you're like going on these yo-yo diets, all your body does is take the protein, which is nitrogen plus carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and then it just slashes that nitrogen out, and basically your body has now created a new fuel source, which is basically the same as what you've been always having, carbohydrates. Basically it changed protein to carbohydrates. This is something that you don't want to see, okay? And again, this happens so often, especially when people go to, I want to have a high protein diet. Clearly that's good for weight loss, and indicates that it's not. Let's move down the line, okay? So just remember this. I would say two things that you want to take away from this video, okay? The two biggest things is that, one, insulin is going to suppress fat mobilization, okay? So when the more insulin that's flooded into the blood, okay, the less likely you're going to be able to lose weight and use fat as fuel and mobilize into the blood. Number two is going to be, if you're on a high protein diet directly after a high carbohydrate diet, which is basically just your generalized, normal diet in today's society, basically you're just taking the nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, okay, this, which is protein, and you're just slashing the nitrogen off and creating carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, which is going to be carbohydrates. Let's keep going down the line. So those are the two things you want to take away from this video right now. So now we're going down the line. So now we're going into more of a favorable realm for weight loss. Okay, and then this is, where we'll talk about ketogenics, because ketogenics is going to be the most efficient way for you to lose weight. Bottom line, for this type of goal, for weight loss, it's the most efficient. In my opinion, it's probably the most efficient way to accomplish any goal, and like I've been at this for 12 years now, okay? I've done every type of diet that there is, and I've done it with every type of client there is as well, and the most efficient, we'll talk about it more often and down the line, is going to be one, not necessarily, well, we won't go there, but is going to be more in favor of a high amount of fat, moderate amount of protein, okay, and a low amount of carbohydrates. So, three things you want to take away, let's just review real quick. One, insulin is going to suppress fat mobilization. Two, if you have a high amount of protein in your diet immediately after having just normal carbohydrate intake, which is 70%, 60%, your body's going to be like, no effing way, man. I got lots of protein here. I can get sugar from this, no problem. Three, okay, weight loss is going to be most efficient when it's 70%, well, not 70% necessarily, but a high amount of fat. Just remember these three things: high amount of fat, moderate amount of protein, and low amounts of carbohydrates. That's going to be the most efficient, okay, when it comes to the weight loss process. So we're going down the line here continually here. We've got paleo, ketogenic, Whole30. Ketogenic is going to be the more extreme on that side of the spectrum, okay? Paleo and ketogenics are going to be somewhat similar. I think under paleo, under certain circumstances, you can have certain tubers and legumes. Actually, I don't know if that's true. Yeah. There are so many variations. You know how like everybody always says like, there truly is different approaches to lots of diets. And there are so many contradictions out there that it's really hard to keep up with what exactly is the actual thing. I mean, these are like paleo is man-made. I mean, ketogenic is man-made. They're all man-made as far as the name. but the principles that they bring are pretty much, have always been since the dawn of time, well, for us at least. So the one thing that ketogenic is basically going to talk about is that you're basically going to be mobilizing fat as fuel. You're going to be taking that fat, okay, and turning it into ketones and free fatty acids, all right? And you're going to be using that as fuel, all right? And it's basically called a state of ketosis, okay? Don't get this confused with ketoacidosis. Ketoacidosis is going to be basically a flood of ketones, too many ketones, a buildup of ketones in the blood and in the kidneys. And this happens when someone is trying to do a keto-adaptive diet, but then let's just say on the weekend, like the first 5 days of the week, Monday through Friday, they're money, they're awesome. And Saturday and Sunday, they go off the reservation, they drink like crazy, they eat whatever the hell they want. Their body has now been in a keto-adaptive state. There's ketones in the blood. I mean, it depends on how long you've been on it for, but the bottom line here, the way you really do get into a ketoacidosis state, okay, is if you have all these ketones in the blood, they're ready to be used as fuel, and then all of a sudden, you throw insulin into the picture, and now insulin is blocking this ability, and it's basically just using sugar first because that's what you've eaten. Now there's all of these ketones in the blood, free fatty acids in the blood, and your body's like, I can't use this, I gotta use this. It's just, I don't really have a choice right now. Sorry, there's a fly over here. I don't really have a choice right now. So you have all of these ketones, you know, and you have to do this on a regular basis. So that's kind of a danger that you have to watch out for. But ketosis is going to be your ability to utilize fat as fuel, okay, over a prolonged period of time, and changing fat into ketones and free fatty acids to be used, okay? So we're gonna see this down the line, okay? We've got 70, 20, 10. That's probably going to be the most efficient way and the ketogenic way, okay? You can find some paleo, depending on which, you know, what foods you are having in paleo, and Whole30, you could probably find some variation of high amounts of fats and moderate in 20, I think. Not really sure, actually. Yeah. Oh. Okay, so bottom line here is, okay, as you go down the spectrum here, you're going to have a low amount of carbohydrates, moderate amount of protein, and a high amount of fat. Okay? Now, as you can see here, these graphs here are basically how fuel looks in your body. So this is going to be basically time, and this is going to be energy, basically intensity, or how your body is actually utilizing the fuel over a given period of time. So this graph here shows a peak and a drop. A drastic rise, followed by a very immediate drastic fall. That's typically going to be the case with high amounts of glucose in the blood, and your body is going to have to come down eventually, and it does. We have high amounts of sugar in the diet. As we go along here, we start to decrease the amount of carbohydrates in the diet, and so you kind of have this a similar effect. You're still using carbohydrates, okay? Now, it's just a less of a drastic rise, and it's not as high a peak as the previous, and it lasts a little longer, but then it falls pretty much relatively soon. But the bottom line here is that there's no consistency. There's always like some sort of quick rise followed by a quick fall, and it's really just, with a carbohydrate diet, just seeing how long you can prolong that energy use before the fall happens. Okay, so that's pretty much the case here. Obviously you don't want, that's pretty damn short, and a pretty much, that's very drastic. We don't want to see that. This, if we're like eating carbohydrates from a high percentage, this is acceptable, I guess, but again, this is all general. And then we have keto-adaptive state and then ketosis. Okay, your body is starting to utilize fat as fuel. You're still taking in carbohydrates. Okay, but basically what's happening here is that the amount of carbohydrates that you're having is not really having an effect of you converting back to being a carbohydrate burner, so to speak. You're still using and mobilizing fat as fuel in an efficient way. However, there is a decent amount of carbohydrates in the diet, but you are still considered a fat burner. Full-blown ketosis is going to be, carbohydrates really don't kind of run metabolism at all. They don't put a blip on the radar. I mean, they do, but like really as far as your goals go, let's just say weight loss, not really, okay? energy is going to be static. There's not really going to be any rise and falls. Don't get me wrong, when you're in ketosis, of course you'll feel some lulls here and there. You'll feel low energy sometimes. Like there are some times where you're in ketosis, which for some people is just like life, you know, like they feel tired and they feel awake more so than others. But it's really not this drastic, like, I need to eat food because I'm gonna die. It's not this compulsive need. You know, you're so hungry sometimes and you're like, I'm gonna rip someone's effing head off if I don't get a fucking cracker or something. That you don't really experience. You don't really experience the really emotional lows that you would experience with a high carbohydrate diet. So, as we said here, carbohydrates are really not going to have too much of an impact on general metabolism, of course, on the scale that we're talking about, and fat is going to be driving, your energy expenditure. I feel like I went really fast, but if you guys have any questions, this was just kind of a generalized video on how to kind of decipher what it means to go on a diet and matching it with your goals. That's kind of the really important thing, because it's great if you want to go on a diet and you want to get healthier, but it's also important to understand that you need to know what goes with what. Just because it sounds healthy, I know, having plant-based foods and stuff like that, and fruits and grains and stuff like that. Yes, in some circumstances, for some individuals, depending on where the individual is, it could be great for them and not so great for somebody else, depending on their goal, depending on who they are, depending on where they are in their life cycle. It really just does depend on the individual. But generally speaking, I wanted to give you tools that you can take away from this video so you can kind of apply it to what step you want to take. Bottom line here is 3 things that we want to take away from. 1, is going to be, if you're having a high amount of carbohydrates in the diet, that's going to spark insulin secretion, which means that a high amount of insulin in the blood is going to only decrease or basically shut down your ability to mobilize fat, period. So just remember, sugar and insulin are synonymous for the most part, because when sugar is pretty much brought into the blood, insulin is secreted, unless of course you're diabetic, then of course you have to take insulin. And then once insulin is secreted, fat mobilization stops. So just remember that. Number 2 is going to be the macronutrient thing that we talked about with protein and carbohydrates. Now I point over here and not over here because that nitrogen, if you're just tuning in, that nitrogen, is nitrogen plus a carbohydrate, which is the makeup of protein. So if, let's just say, you're having like a normal shit diet, and then the next day or the next week or the next few weeks, you're like, I'm gonna have a high protein diet, Your body is now, those first couple of days that you're doing that new diet, your body is looking for carbohydrates. And it has the ability to do that by taking the nitrogen and slashing it from the from that protein and turning that protein into carbohydrates. So that's another thing, is just make sure that you're not following up a diet of high carbohydrates to high protein, because they're essentially the same thing and you're going to be in a lot of pain. Actually, it's not going to be fun. 3rd thing, understanding, is going to be, what did we talk about? There's so many things. Well, let's go through a couple. Oh, bottom line, right. Typical breakdown of fat mobilization, and making sure that if you're somebody who's trying to lose weight and you want this principle to kind of get you going, understanding that a high amount of fat in the diet, followed by a moderate amount of protein, followed by a low amount of carbohydrates. And I don't mean followed by, I don't know why I said that. But bottom line here is the macronutrient breakdown for a weight loss plan is going to be high amounts of fat, moderate amounts of protein, and low amounts of carbohydrates. This is the key to weight loss in an efficient manner that will heal you in any aspect that you can really think of. Generalized inflammation. We're talking about like certain comorbidities that you go to the doctor and they're telling you all these things. You have swelling in the ankles, you're pre-diabetic, your blood sugar is really high, high blood pressure, certain hormones are elevated, certain micronutrients are decreased or elevated. There are things here that a high-fat diet can definitely correct, and it's not about, well, it's about the high-fat diet, but the bottom line here is that carbohydrate consumption actually just increases overall inflammation in the body. It's just what it is. These are principles. This is not beliefs. This isn't like me like, I hate carbs and I love fat and I love keto. No, that's not what this is. We're talking about the science here. The science here suggests, and has suggested for long periods of time, that carbohydrate consumption causes generalized inflammation and is not efficient. There's plenty of other kind of like mind-blowing things that we're going to talk about in terms of nutrition and diet down the line, but like I said, I wanted to give you guys a nice introduction to some of the things we're going to go forward with. I really would like to do this live again. I thought it was great actually. It went a lot better than I thought, even if maybe I was going a little too fast or whatever. Yeah, so I'm probably going to do live again. I would think it's just so much easier than like editing videos. I love editing videos, don't get me wrong, but this is so much easier and I love it. So we're going to do this again. Also, if you have any questions, okay, at all about any of this, please post it. I'll get to it for sure. If you guys want to learn about anything new or anything different or something that maybe I didn't touch on as far as this goes, in terms of health and nutrition, please let me know and I will definitely get to it. We'll talk about it. And if you liked the video, show a like. If you didn't, show a thumbs down. If you want to subscribe to get updates on what we're going to be doing next, awesome. And see you guys out there. This was great. Have an awesome day.